Welcome back to the IBFP. Here's your host, Boxing New.
Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back to part one of the Q&A with the IBFP, where you only get the truth from us. You don't get the truth from everybody. Everybody's not going to tell you the truth. Every other podcast is going to claim to be fair, going to claim to be balanced, going to claim to be unbiased, but they're not going to tell you the truth. They withhold information. They hold back from being 100% real, and they allow their biases to interfere with the truth. That's what we don't do. So with part one of the Q&A, let's just get it started. And the first question comes from Manny530, and he states, explain the face of boxing. Ego and his fangirls seem to be in denial when it comes to Canelo being the face of boxing. If not Canelo, then who could it be in their book? Anytime that the biased new media come out and states that, Canelo's not the face of boxing or anything like that, is ludicrous. There's only one face of boxing, but you could also consider another, and that's Anthony Joshua. Canelo Alvarez and Anthony Joshua are purely, most likely the only two faces of boxing. Anthony Joshua has record ticket sales, record pay-per-views. Canelo Alvarez does great on ticket sales, does great when he did pay-per-view. Both of these two guys are the faces of boxers. Both of these guys, have won championship belts. Both of these guys are trying to be great. Both of those guys can only be considered the faces of boxing. You got to understand, this is the same ego who said Deontay Wilder, who was a certified hype job, was the face of boxing. These guys are delusional. And let's keep it going. Bread Game asks, Vergil Ortiz versus Keith Thurman. Let's make it happen. I would love that fight. I think Vergil Ortiz would do terrific in a fight like that. I think Vergil Ortiz is truly the future of boxing. The problem with that fight getting made is I don't see Keith Thurman taking any type of risk in any type of fight without being overly paid. Like, this guy would want millions and millions of dollars to step in the ring against a guy like Vergil Ortiz at this point. He doesn't care about the experience. He doesn't care about, all the stuff that he has an advantage over Vergil Ortiz. He simply just wants a big payday to take that type of risk. And what I mean is a big payday is a payday that he would price himself out of. Think about it like this. He wouldn't even take a Terrence Crawford fight unless it was more than likely $10 million, something outrageous. So at the end of the day, Keith Thurman versus Ortiz, that's likely never going to happen. Soccer Training Club states, why do fanboys hate instead of dislike Canelo? The face of boxing. Hate is a strong word. You got to understand that people tend to hate what they don't understand. You got to look at it like this. A lot of these people are, Deontay Wilder or PBC fans. These guys are not boxing fans. A boxing fans can appreciate the greatness when a fighter fights, no matter who it is. When Floyd Mayweather was the face of boxing, I appreciated when Floyd fought simply because his skill set was a joy to watch. I'm a boxing fan before I'm a fan of any fighter. What's good for the sport? Who's bringing the people to the table? Who's putting it all on the line? Who's trying to be great? That matters to me. And I think a lot of people that hate Canelo are simply fans of boxers and not the sport. Let's keep it going. Richie Centron states, what do you think about there being no VADA drug testing for the upcoming Charlo versus Chenko fight? If that's true, Richie, I got to be honest and unbiased. That's probably why Jamal Charlo is talking about knocking out Sergey Deverenchenko. No wonder you're talking about knocking this guy out when you couldn't knock out Brandon Adams, the guy you pulled up from 154. At the end of the day, you couldn't knock out Matt Korobov, and he was supposed to be a showcase fight. You couldn't knock out Austin Trout. So at the end of the day, we're talking about a Jamal Charlo saying that he's going to knock out a battle-tested Sergey Deverenchenko, and there's no VADA. This guy sounds like he wants to be juiced to the gills. Let's keep it going. Revival Amen states, can you please call out Fonte or Boxing Ego for a live debate one-on-one that would boost y'all ratings and get them exposed? I'll tell you what, I'll call them out right now. If Dante's Bias, Cheeseburger Nation, Boxing, I Live in My Mom's Basement, Ego want to debate the IBFP one-on-one, I'd be more than happy to do it. I got to be honest about it, though. Most of these guys, they don't want to smoke. I've never even held a conversation with Boxing Ego, and the guy blocked me on Twitter. So I display it proudly as a badge of honor from the truth through a lie. At the end of the day, Boxing Ego is absolutely a hater. These guys will never debate me. I've called these guys out before in the past. At the end of the day, the truth shall set you free. The next one comes from Unique Styles, and he states, how do you feel about DAZN and Sky Sports potentially joining, and how will that affect ESPN and Showtime if that happens? I think DAZN and Sky Sports would be a great jail matchup, make things a lot easier for fighters. And Sky Sports is still in the pay-per-view business, so I think that would be fantastic. I think Showtime could potentially be on the way out, but that's why the only way that Showtime's able to stage any fight is by simply putting it on pay-per-view. If you look at ESPN, they need to make sure their bigger fights are on pay-per-view, like Loma versus Teofimo, because that fight needs to happen for the sport of boxing, for the good of the sport. So I think, with DAZN and Sky Sports potentially joining forces, I think that should make boxing as a whole work harder to keep up. Great question. The next one comes from Gary Manning, and he says, considering there's no crowds, do you think there will be less conventional decisions in boxing due to the fact that the judges won't be persuaded by the crowd? I'm going to be honest with you. I think if a judge has a preconceived notion, it has nothing to do with the crowd. More than likely, it's a bias that they walked into the fight with. Look at it like this. When you look at the Errol Spence fight versus the Sean Porter fight, and when you teach people how to judge a fight and you look at ring generalship, defense, these other type of things, Errol Spence did not display those key factors in winning that Sean Porter fight. He dropped them towards the end of the fight, but I think they had a preconceived notion simply because he was the bigger name going into the fight, and they edged him to win the fight in a split decision. I didn't like that decision. I felt like it was a little fugazi, but what can you do? At the end of the day, I think the judge's decision will be much of the same. Great question, Gary. The next one comes from A.B. Cuts, and he said, if Loma can't get a fight with TL, should he move down and get the Burchelt smoke? I would love that fight for Lomachenko, but I also think there's a lot of smoke still at 135, and Burchelt has talked about potentially moving up to 135 to get the Loma smoke. So if that happens, then you'll get everybody at 135, and you'll get to always see the best versus the best. Loma still says he wants to clear out the division at 135, so I would love to see it. Let's keep it going. Chain TC says, did Canelo duck Triple G when he vacated his belt instead of fighting? Explain this to me. I've heard a few people say this. How do you duck someone that you fought twice and is offering a trilogy? That makes no sense. A lot of people don't even realize that Canelo and Triple G even had a verbal agreement in place before they even fought. See, a lot of people simply don't even know that. Almost a year in advance. So this is something that people are just starting to understand, and people want to hold on to this myth as Triple G as being some monster when Canelo Alvarez fought the guy twice and Triple G don't want the third one right away. We got to be honest and unbiased. The next question comes from Danny PJ, and he states Teofimo Lopez or Devin Haney, because I think Haney is overrated. I'm going to go with Teofimo Lopez. He's the more proven product right now. His power is legit. Devin Haney right now, he simply needs to step it up. He has all the potential in the world. We simply need to see him in there against a live body to see what he can do. The next one comes from Godarm, and he states, why do casuals say Canelo fights nobodies when his last 4 fights were by 4 different top 5 contenders in their weight class? And you can also say champions, Kovalev, Jacobs, Rocky, and Triple G twice. I think people say that because they don't like Canelo Alvarez. And if he's not fighting who they want him to fight, then they feel like those opponents are not good enough. Think about it like this. Sergey Kovalev is going to the Hall of Fame. Canelo Alvarez be the sitting world champion coming off a win to win a world title in the division 2 divisions higher, and people don't want to give him credit. People don't want to give him credit for Danny Jacobs, who has a better resume and who's considered better than Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo. People don't want to give him credit. So at the end of the day, this is how fanboys are. They're not fans of boxing. They're fans of boxers. Great question. The next one comes from Dragon Leg. Salute to Dragon Leg. He says, you think Teofimo ducking or renegotiating a better offer? Stay safe, Nuke. Salute, Dragon. You stay safe as well, my brother. I think Teofimo is a little bit of both right now. I think he is trying to get a better offer, and there's nothing wrong with trying to get a better offer. But you don't, flat out reject situations if it's the best offer and it's a make or break deal, because if you end up losing the fight, that's an official duck. That means you're the guy who called for this fight. You're the guy who begged for this fight. You're the guy who said you'd fight this guy and you can't wait to fight him and you'll show the world. Then beat this guy and then get a triple the person, the rematch, and you're the A side. Just go out and prove what you got to do if you're that much better. You haggling over a little bit of money is not going to show that you're the better fighter. We got to be honest and unbiased. Great question. The next one comes from Gary Manning again, and he states, what are your thoughts on Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr.? And I think that that'll be an interesting fight. At the end of the day, I would prefer both of these guys who are Hall of Fame and legends to just, stay retired, not risk getting in the ring and getting hurt. But, it is something I will be watching. Let's keep it going. Chris states, Sugar Tank Davis is fighting Leo Santa Cruz. What's up, cherry pick or what at 132 belts on the line? Boring. Snooze fest. And look, let's just look at it like this. Tank Davis facing Leo Santa Cruz at 130. Leo Santa Cruz is a guy who fights at 126. A guy who has no real defense, who fights with a lot of pressure. He's tailor-made for Tank Davis, and the fact that they're pulling him up in weight makes no sense, and the fact that Tank Davis is moving down in weight makes no sense. At the end of the day, these guys don't want to be great. It's a disguised cherry pick. Let's keep it going. Martin Morris states, good morning, Nuke. Salute to you, Martin Morris. He also says, we hear Tyson Fury is this great boxer. If you was to fight him, what tactics would you use? I would use a lot of pressure to break down Tyson Fury, to overwhelm him. I'll also go to the body. I see a lot of, head movement from Tyson Fury, but his body is always in range and available to be hit. So I would go to the body. I would keep a lot of pressure, high work rate, and I think those are the type of things that keep Tyson Fury off balance and make it so he's not able to time you. Great question, Martin. Fernie X states, will Jermall Charlo get exposed by Sergey Derevyanchenko? One-sided or competitive? I think it'll be a competitive fight because you also got to remember Sergey Derevyanchenko is not an elite defensive fighter either. So he's going to take some big shots, but so is Jermall Charlo. So it would be an interesting chess match early, but I think Sergey Derevyanchenko pulls away late. Great question. EEE states, if anyone right now could beat Canelo, who would it be? At a fair catch weight, of course, neither fighter having an advantage. The only guy right now that I would have to edge that would say have the best chance of beating Canelo is Dimitri Bivol. Simply because he's bigger, stronger, fights in a bigger weight class than Canelo Alvarez. And, he has a very good elite level jab. That's something Canelo had difficulties with in the first Triple G fight. He has a very good IQ. So I think Dimitri Bivol would be Canelo Alvarez's biggest potential upset or challenge at this point. Although I still favor Canelo to beat him at 168. If Canelo fought him at 175, I would have to go to Bivol at that point. Great question. Immortal Boxing Truth IBT, salute to you, brother. He states, if Jermall Charlo or Jason Rosario becomes a 3-belt unified champion, do they enter the pound for pound top 10? I think they don't have fantastic skills, but that kind of accomplishment is very noteworthy. Thoughts, IBFP? Salute, IBFP. Salute to you as well. I think they could be in the discussion. The only problem with adding them right away is the fact that, who are you going to move out? I'm not moving out of Nui. I'm not moving out Josh Taylor. I feel like these are people that have earned their spots and have had a much harder road to get there. 154 has been somewhat of an open division. So at the end of the day, I don't know if I can move these guys into the top 10 pound for pound because I have to move someone out. But what I will say is this. If these guys go undisputed, no doubt they have to be top 10 regardless. Great question. The next one comes from Superb Supreme, and he states, is Shakur Stevenson ducking Miguel Berchelt? Not at all, I don't believe. Shakur Stevenson asked for a fight against Oscar Valdez and stated the winner fights Berchelt. He's trying to get all the smoke, and I would love to see that. I would love to see that happen. I've never seen Shakur duck a fight. He's extremely confident in himself, so I do like that matchup. I think it'll happen one day. Great question. AB Cuts again states, should Andy Ruiz take the Manuel Charr fight? Andy Ruiz, needs to put the cheeseburger down, get in shape, and do everything that Eddie Reynoso tells him to do. We want to see Andy Ruiz get another title shot. We want to see him fight the top-level fighters. We want to see him challenge himself. We want to see Andy Ruiz prove to the world that it's no fluke, that he should be at the top of the boxing game. But he can't do that fighting Manuel Charr. He can't do that fighting guys like Chris, I'm a nobody, Areola. He has to fight legit competition. I think, Andy Ruiz should be focused on a guy like Dillian White. He could have been lined up if he won that fight to face a guy like Fury or Wilder winner. So, he passed on that opportunity. So at the end of the day, I think those are the type of fights for him, not guys like Manuel Charr or Chris Areola. Great question. The next one comes from Carlos Ramirez. Is Shakur ducking Gary? Everybody thinks Shakur Stevenson is ducking someone. Shakur Stevenson is not ducking Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell is calling out everybody at the moment. He's clout chasing even Terrence Crawford. So we got to see who Gary Russell's going to get in the ring with first. Great question. Gavin Baca states, do you think Canelo should do a UFC fight? I don't think so, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't criticize him if he did for one simple reason. If Floyd Mayweather can fight Conor McGregor, a guy who's never boxed before, it goes on his resume and breaks a boxing record. A guy who's not even a boxer, and people applaud it and are so celebrated. And why can't Canelo? We got to keep that same energy for everybody. Let's keep it going. Brandon Green states, we all know Spence should be Bud Crawford's next opponent. Since Errol Spence continues to duck, what are some interesting matchups for Bud at 147 right now and why? I appreciate the detail in your analysis. P.S. I hate how people don't give Bud credit for the win over Mean Machine. Mean Machine gives all PBC welterweights problems. I agree 100%. I think Mean Machine is underrated and undervalued, and it's simply because he doesn't have brand and name recognition that people are used to. But I think Mean Machine gives a lot of welterweights hell, especially on the PBC side, and maybe even beats one of them. Think about it. Keith Thurman almost lost to Josecito Lopez. Let that sink in, but you say Mean Machine's a bum. You also see that Danny Garcia couldn't get rid of Ivan Redcatch, but you say Mean Machine was a bum. Mean Machine would give Danny Garcia all kinds of hell, Keith Thurman hell. So, you got to be real about it. Stylistically, the Shawn Porter fight will be interesting, and Errol Spence doesn't have a lot of head movement. I think right now Bud Crawford's best bet, if he can't get any welterweight, is to move up to 154 and snatch a belt and then come back down to 47. He needs to just go for greatness and accomplishments at this moment if everybody's going to duck the smoke. But I think the one welterweight fight that makes the most sense for him is Manny Pacquiao. He'll get a belt, he'll get a chance at a Hall of Famer, and the only way to make that fight is if Bud Crawford is even willing to take a pay cut. It's gotten that bad that these guys don't want to face him at any point because they're scared to lose their own. Manny's not afraid, he's not ducking any smoke, so I think it makes sense. If I'm Bud Crawford and I really want that fight, is I'm going to have to take a pay cut. We're going to have to overpay Manny Pacquiao. We're going to have to give all of the concessions to Manny Pacquiao, and then you go get that belt. And, at that point, the ducking has to stop. Great question, Brandon. I appreciate it. The next one comes from Valerio, and he states, how do you think a fight between Errol Spence and Danny Garcia is going to end up? Even though Danny came out short with Shawn Porter, I think it'll be a chess match at this point, and I'm going to slightly edge Errol Spence with a controversial decision. I think if the fight's close, they're going to give it to Spence no matter what. Even if Danny Garcia clearly wins, they're going to give it to Errol Spence if it's somewhat close. Same thing happened with Shawn Porter. The fight was very close, but you could pretty much clearly see Shawn Porter won all the early rounds. Spence didn't dominate a whole 6 rounds in a row or nothing like that, so I don't see how he won the fight. It doesn't make sense. But when you look at it, I think because Errol Spence has the bigger name, if the fight is close, they're going to give it to Errol Spence. But Danny Garcia is going to have to get a couple knockdowns to win this fight. Great question. The next one comes from Juan Lopez. Andrade or Charlo? At this point, I'm going to lean towards Andrade slightly, but, I wouldn't be mad if you said Charlo. I think it's a great fight. Andrade's chin is not tested, and Charlo's boxing ability is garbage truck juice. So we got to see, how these two guys match up when they actually get in the ring. Augustine Roque states, is Canelo ducking Demetrius Andrade? Impossible. At the end of the day, Canelo Alvarez is facing all the top-level competition. Demetrius Andrade has literally fought no one. Demetrius Andrade and Canelo Alvarez have a potential to fight right now, according to Eddie Hearn. That is a potential Canelo Alvarez opponent for the price. So at the end of the day, if Canelo ends up selecting this guy, it's impossible to duck him. Let's keep going. Round 105 states, how do you think Andy Ruiz will do under the tutelage of Eddie Reynoso? I think that Andy Ruiz could turn into a complete elite fighter if he listens to Eddie Reynoso. Eddie Reynoso can take you very far in the sport. You saw what he did to Canelo Alvarez. You see how he's developing Ryan Garcia. Trust in Eddie Reynoso. He will take you far. Great question. Israel Diaz says, hey, New, can you please debate Akai TV and Boxing Go? Please school them clowns. I would love to, but these guys are afraid of the IBFP. They're afraid of the truth. Anytime these guys want to debate, they can come to my channel. I'll go to theirs. However they want to do it, I will smoke both of those turkeys in the same day. Let's be honest and unbiased. Gonzalo Hernandez states, what's going on with Canelo Alvarez? Why hasn't Golden Boy or the Zone got him a fight yet? Want to see the Canelo fight already. I agree. I would love to see the fight already. I would love to see it booked. But what's going on is, Canelo Alvarez is taking a pay cut from the gate. Canelo Alvarez has already taken another pay cut from sponsorship. So Canelo Alvarez is taking 2 pay cuts already. And the Zone does not want to honor their contractual obligation to pay him $30 million. So since they don't want to do that, they need to put the fight on pay-per-view so they can make up the money. But the Zone doesn't want to do that. They want Canelo Alvarez to take a 3rd pay cut and not put it on pay-per-view and stick to their business model. Obviously, if you're hurting due to the coronavirus and this guy's taking 2 pay cuts and he's still the biggest star in some sport, why don't you use the pay-per-view model to make up the money? It only makes sense. The Zone has not budged as of yet. And so, we got to be honest and unbiased. This is part 1 of the Q&A with the IBFP, the only one who tells the truth. Salute.